Very bright guy with the Heritage Foundation. Go, Kevin.
Thanks. I believe I have some PowerPoint slides. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Awesome. Okay. So let's get started. So, thank you, Mr. Speaker, Congressman Pittenger, distinguished guests. Thank you for being here today and for having me. My name is Kevin Dayaratna. I'm the Acting Director, Chief Statistician, and Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C. And I'm going to talk about energy, human flourishing, and associated security implications. So, firstly, let me start with the concept of energy in and of itself. Energy is literally the fundamental building block of society. From enabling you to turn on a light switch, from enabling you to start your cars, to enabling this very form to operate, energy is literally the basis of anything and everything we do. And sadly, many people take it for granted. Next slide. So many people don't understand the complexity of energy. Next slide. Yeah, right there. Keep it there. So obviously, when you turn on a light switch, you see the outcome. You see the light turn on, right? But what most people don't seem to realize and appreciate is the beauty regarding what goes on behind the scenes. It is a brilliant invention of mankind, the concept of energy. Next slide. So, a good question is, how has access to affordable and reliable energy transformed society? Next slide. So, we looked at this question in America. There are many things that many people take for granted, here in America as well as throughout the world. And on the x-axis, you have a bunch of plots here. These are also outlined in a paper that we have just distributed titled Powering Human Advancement, I should say, with my colleagues Diana Furchtgott-Roth, Miles Pollard, and Richard Stern. And in it, we look at many of the questions that I'm about to discuss. Here are a bunch of plots. The x-axis is time in terms of year, and the y-axis is the percent of the society that has adopted the associated technology. And look at what you can see here. For example, there are many things that people take for granted, like the household refrigerator, the automobile, the vacuum cleaner, the washer, the dryer, the cellular phone. And they've become rapidly adapted by society. But there's a simple reason why. The country, particularly America as well as the rest of the world, much of the rest of the world, has had access to affordable and reliable energy. Next slide. So here are some charts about the evolution of energy consumption in America. The first chart is aggregate consumption. And you can see that in 1900, we had about 9.6 quadrillion BTUs of aggregate consumption. And in 2018, you can see how this proliferated over time. In 2018, this amounted to slightly under 95 quadrillion BTUs. On a per capita basis, there were about 128 million BTUs per capita consumed in 1900. And this more than doubled to 280 or so million BTUs per capita in 2018. Next slide. Now you can see a similar behavior, I should say, globally. In 1900, there were 45 quadrillion BTUs consumed in the aggregate worldwide, and over 600 by 2018. And you can see a similar uptick in terms of consumption on a per capita basis. So now, along with the proliferation of the consumption of energy in America as well as globally, what has also evolved over time? Next slide. Per capita GDP. Globally, in 1900, per capita GDP, and this is all normalized, was $2,200. In 2018, it steamrolled up to $15,000. In the United States, per capita GDP in 1900 was $8,000. And in 2018, it was over $55,000. Next slide. Labor productivity. The beauty about access to affordable and reliable energy is that it is possible for workers to output the same amount of resources or produce, I should say, the same amount of output with involving less labor and capital. So as a result here, you could see, for example, in 1950, output was $20 per hour worked, and in 2018, that steamrolled up to $73 per hour worked. Life expectancy, next chart. In 1900, life expectancy was a mere 32 years of age globally. It skyrocketed over the 20th century to 71 years, well into the 21st century in 2018. In America, you see a similar story. In 1900, it was a mere 49 years. Right now, it is slightly under 80 years of age. Next slide. Child mortality, that's plummeted. Sadly, in 1950, globally, child mortality was over a quarter, or slightly under a quarter, I should say. In 2021, it was slightly under 4%. In 1950, in the United States, it was around 3.7%, and in 2021, it was fortunately less than 1%. Next slide. You could see the uptick in agricultural productivity. And again, there, due to access to affordable and reliable energy, you could actually do more on the farm. Instead of workers actually having to do much of the raw work, now modernized countries can leverage machines and beautiful techniques in engineering, physics, statistics, machine learning to be able to take more out of farms. The first chart is corn yield, and the second chart is wheat yield. And you could see the uptick globally as well as in the United States. So now, these charts were interesting. These time series plots that I had presented are interesting, but we don't really get to see. No, next slide, please. We don't really get to see how we have the heterogeneity that exists throughout the world. So that's what the next few charts involve. So next slide, please. Here we have the juxtaposition of per capita GDP versus per capita energy consumption. Per capita energy consumption is on the x-axis, per capita GDP is on the y-axis. Each dot is a country. And you could see to the left of this best fit line, you have developing nations. Particularly Lesotho, Djibouti, and Zimbabwe, for example, consume less than 3,500 kilowatt hours on a per capita basis and have less than $3,300 in terms of per capita GDP. Toward the right end of the best fit line, you could see countries like Norway, Iceland, and the United States consuming in excess of 80 kilowatt hours per capita and having over $43,000 in per capita GDP. The Philippines is around $5,000 on the 5,000 kilowatt hours on a per capita basis on the x-axis right there. So the per capita GDP is around $8,000. Next slide. Per capita energy and household consumption. Again, those developing nations, again, consume less than 3,500 kilowatt hours on a per capita basis and have less than $2,500 or so in terms of per capita household consumption. The developed world, such as Norway, the United States, and Iceland, for example, and there are three dots here toward the right end of the best fit line, have consumed, like I said, in excess of 80 kilowatt hours on a per capita basis and over $24,000 in terms of per capita household consumption. Again, the Philippines is toward the left of center of the best fit line. And there, here it consumes about 5,000 kilowatt hours on a per capita basis and has about $6,000 in terms of per capita household consumption. Next slide. This is interesting. This is the global per capita energy consumption and population living on less than $30 a day. The percentage of such population is on the y-axis, and again, the x-axis is per capita energy consumption. And you can see this dramatic drop-off once you hit 10,000 kilowatt hours on a per capita basis. Next slide. I was alluding to agricultural productivity earlier. Here you could see the tremendous heterogeneity worldwide. On the left end of the curve, you could see developing nations that don't produce nearly as much corn and wheat as the developed world does. Next slide. So this is the link between per capita energy consumption and public health. So here you could see four key metrics. The first chart on the upper left-hand corner is the number of doctors per 1,000 people. The second chart on the top is life expectancy in years, and the bottom two best fit lines involve the child mortality rate and the maternal mortality rate. And you could see that, obviously, the number of doctors available and life expectancy increases as a result of having access to energy, and the child mortality rate and the maternal mortality rate plummet. So in terms of the Philippines, again, the per capita energy consumption is 5,000 kilowatt hours per capita. Life expectancy here, I checked, is around 70 years of age. The child mortality rate is around 2.7%, and the maternal mortality rate is 121 per 100,000 live births. Next slide. This is one of my favorites. This is the link between per capita energy consumption and public health related variables regarding environmental metrics, namely the deaths due to dirty air and deaths due to dirty water. Now, there isn't anybody on either side of the aisle that doesn't want clean air and doesn't want clean water. But what you could see here is that the developing nations do much more poorly on these metrics than the developed world. For example, Somalia and Madagascar have consumed less than 600 kilowatt hours on a per capita basis. They have 16% of deaths attributable to air pollution and more than 78 per 100,000 deaths due to dirty water. Finland, Sweden, and Iceland, on the other hand, consume in excess of 60,000 kilowatt hours on a per capita basis and have less than 1% deaths due to air pollution and less than 0.01 deaths per 100,000 due to dirty water. Next slide. So what does this tell us? Access to affordable and reliable energy is fundamentally linked to human flourishing. Next slide. So we looked at this question regarding the United States. In America, can we do even better, especially with Donald Trump now taking his second term in office? Next slide. So North America is vastly abundant in oil and gas. Lou was alluding to this earlier. The Institute for Energy Research publishes every few years its North American energy inventory. And they publish the technically recoverable as well as overall amounts of oil, gas, and coal available in North America, in Mexico, the United States, and Canada. And as you can see here, the United States has over 1.6 trillion barrels of oil and over 4 quadrillion cubic feet of technically recoverable natural gas. Next slide. So the question is, can we model the economic impact of actually leveraging these resources? This was manifested in President Trump's Unleashing American Energy Executive Order. Next slide. So at the Heritage Foundation Center for Data Analysis, we have the Heritage Energy Model, which is a clone of our Department of Energy's National Energy Modeling System, enabling us to forecast the economic impact of various energy policies. So what we did was we juxtaposed their high oil and gas case, which involves 50% higher supply of oil and gas than their business as usual reference case, and compared the economic impact. Next slide. So, from an employment perspective, like I said, energy is the fundamental building block of society. By injecting more, no pun intended, more supply of oil and gas into the market, as a result, the cost of hiring becomes cheaper. You have over a 25-year time horizon, you have, on average, 5 million jobs created compared to the business as usual case. Next slide. In terms of personal income, everybody prospers. On average, you have an on-average increase of $10,000 of increased income for a family of 4, amounting to $25 trillion of increase in GDP over a 25-year time horizon. Next slide. Now, some may contend that, okay, even if you can extract these resources, they will exacerbate climate change. Well, this is actually a very good question to quantify. Next slide. So at the Heritage Foundation Center for Data Analysis, we also have another model, the model for the assessment of greenhouse gas-induced climate change, MAGIC with 2 C's. It is an intergovernmental panel on climate change model. We assume commonly accepted projections regarding carbon dioxide emissions and greenhouse gas emissions going forward, and we varied climate sensitivity in ranges in which the IPCC deems to be most likely. Climate sensitivity, in a nutshell, is the Earth's sensitivity in response to CO2 emissions. Most would agree that the planet will warm with respect to CO2 emissions. The real question is, to what degree? No pun intended. So the IPCC's assumptions are that after equilibrium is achieved, Earth will warm between 2 and 5 degrees Celsius in response to a doubling of CO2 emissions. So we chose those assumptions in this model, and we increased emissions starting in 2020 in accordance with our Heritage Energy Model simulation. Here are our results. Next slide. So we have temperature trajectories, increases, I should say, up through 2100. We have a variety of pairs of curves. They're also in our paper. The gray curves are the business as usual trajectory, the trajectory we are currently on. The blue curves are what will happen under this hypothetical scenario of increasing the supply and use of oil and gas. And you can see that these curves are barely distinguishable. Under worst case scenarios in 2100, under a 5-degree climate sensitivity, there is a slight temperature increase as a result of extracting this supply, 0.03 degrees Celsius. It's barely measurable on a thermometer. Next slide. Now, what is the energy mix here in the Philippines? This is a great question. Next slide. This is from countries need affordable and reliable energy. It is essential that they have it. And a country needs to be energy independent of rogue nations to secure its people. This was a problem, for example, in Europe with what was going on between Russia and Ukraine, and certain countries had dependence on Russian natural gas. Next slide. So the policy implications. We recommend avoiding carbon-based regulation. At the Heritage Foundation Center for Data Analysis, we also estimated the policy, the outcomes of net zero, for example. If the United States were to completely abate CO2 emissions, there'd be less than 0.23 degrees Celsius temperature mitigation by 2100. If the European Union were to completely abate CO2 emissions, there would be less than 0.13 degrees Celsius temperature mitigation by 2100, even assuming worst case scenarios by the IPCC. The Philippines would be far less, about less than 0.01 degrees Celsius temperature mitigation. We strongly encourage utilizing resources to extract all forms of energy and utilize all forms of energy. It's just tantamount, for example, to having a variety of investments. You want to diversify as much as possible. There is nothing wrong, I will emphasize, with renewable sources of energy as long as everything is competing on a level playing field and there is no source of energy, renewable or not, that is propped up by government subsidies and tax credits. There are opportunities now within the Trump administration because the Trump administration, like I said, has issued its Unleashing American Energy Executive Order, extracting these resources at home. There'll be opportunities for exportation. And again, we strongly encourage avoiding dependence on potential rogue nations because of the consequences I was describing earlier. And again, I will emphasize, affordable and reliable energy are inextricably linked to human flourishing. Next slide. Thank you. Happy to take any questions at the end.
Thank you, Kevin. Now, Lou Prograssi, yes?